Good morning. You're welcome to yet another session, A01, Common Course, Essential English Language Skills. This time, boys and girls, we are moving on to another module of the prescribed syllabus for you. It is one of the most important modules in this particular syllabus. Well, you remember I told you about the 4 basic skills of the language: listening to the language, speaking the language, reading the language, and writing the language. To be a good communicator, which we are trying to become, these 4 skills have to be mastered by any learner. Your 4th module of the syllabus is dealing with one of these skills, namely speaking skills. When we listen to somebody speaking to us, we make a comment later. Oh, he speaks well. She speaks well. So speaking is perhaps one of the criteria to assess a person's language skills as well as his personality. Speaking is perhaps one of the most fundamental skills of the language. In a situation like that of Kerala, speakers of English in Kerala whose L1 mother tongue is Malayalam, one has to speak and impress the listeners in different situations. This module, or speaking skills of the language, perhaps is to equip you to be better speakers and to know the intricacies of using the language in such a way that the listener will be able to appreciate your language. Man is a social animal, and we deal with fellow beings in more than one situations every day. So we should be able to speak the language or use the language in a wide range of contexts. What do I mean by wide range of contexts? We are at home with our parents and siblings. We are at school or college with our fellow students, teachers, principal. We are at the playground with our playmates. Some of us are at work with our colleagues. We visit different places, like when we board a bus, we interact with the conductor. While we are in a shop, we interact with the shopkeeper or the salesman or the salesgirl there. When we fall sick, we go to a doctor for consultation. Sometimes we are in a medical shop. Sometimes we are in a railway station buying a ticket from the railway counter. Sometimes we are in a dress shop, textile shop, buying clothes. In all these situations, we use the language, and that is why I told you we have to learn to speak the language in a wide range of contexts. As learners of English, it is necessary to develop the ability to manage functional exchanges. It is here in this particular context that I would like to tell you that Scott Thornburg, a linguist, a language expert, he speaks about two basic functions of language. Two basic functions of language. They are transactional function and interpersonal function. I'll write these two words for you on the board. Scott Thornburg, a linguist, a language expert, while speaking about speaking skills of the language, says that speaking the language has two functions, and these two functions are transactional functions and interpersonal functions. Interpersonal functions. I'll try to explain to you what these two terms mean. They are the two functions of speaking the language. One is transactional functions. What is this transactional functions? Let us take 2 or 3 examples of transactional functions. We get into a bus, ask the conductor or tell the conductor that we want to go to Irnyalakuda and get down in Christ College bus stop. Please give me a ticket. And the conductor asks you, are you traveling on concessional rates? You tell him yes, and you give the money, and he gives a ticket for you to travel. This is a transaction between you and the bus conductor. You use the language there, you speak the language there, and that is an example of a transactional function of speaking skills. One more example, or 2 more examples. You go to a textile shop and asks the sales girl or salesman there, I want a t-shirt. And the salesman asks, what is your size? You tell him the size, and he asks you the choice of color, and you choose from the samples or the models which he presents, and there is a transaction going on between you as a customer and he or she as the representative of the textile shop. This is again an example of a transactional function of speaking the language. Another example would be Suppose you are going to a railway station. You want to know the timing of the trains to the destination where you want to reach. You ask the enquiry officer there about the details of the trains which will take you to your destination. There is a conversation going on between you and the receptionist there or information officer there. This is an example of a transactional function of speaking the language. I hope you understand what do we mean by transactional function of the language. Next is the interpersonal function of the language of the speaking skill. What is interpersonal? It is here that man as a social being comes into importance here. At home, when it is time for you to leave home to the college, you ask your mother, "Mother, is the breakfast ready?" Mother tells you, "Yeah, it has been ready already. You can have your breakfast." You say thank you, and this is an example of an interpersonal function of speaking the language or speaking skills. Again, in the classroom, you find that you have forgotten to take your pen. You ask your friend, "Can you please lend me your pen?" Or, "Can you please spare a pen for me for today?" Your friend says, "Yes, of course, certainly, why not?" This is an example of an interpersonal function of speaking skills. So that is why Scott Thornburg, a linguist, a language expert, has divided speaking skills into having two functions, major functions, and they are transactional function and interpersonal function. I hope you understand what we mean by transactional function and interpersonal function. Now, the purpose of transactional function is to convey information and facilitate the exchange of goods and services. Once again, the purpose of transactional function is to convey information and facilitate the exchange of goods or services. Now, what is the purpose of interpersonal function? Interpersonal function is to establish, I told you, man as a social being is to establish and maintain social relations. Example, social relations, I told you, you and your friend in the classroom, you and your mom at home. Perhaps you are asking your father, "It is time to remit the examination fees. Will you please give me rupees 210, which is the fees prescribed for the examination?" And your father, "Yes, it is ready." And he gives you the money, and that kind of a interpersonal relationship between establishing a kind of an interpersonal relationship is between you and your father comes under interpersonal function of the language. Now, this module, as I told you, is divided into two parts. This module is divided into two parts. The first part is the transactional functions of speaking skills, and the second part is interpersonal function of speaking the language. Now we will divide, or the first part of the module, namely the transactional function, we explain it, or we try to learn more about it in 7 different frames. The first frame I will be mentioning a little later during this session, and more details perhaps in the next session that we are going to meet. Now 7 frames, 7 different frames. Frames means different situations, using the language for transactional purpose. And the interpersonal function of the language is divided into 3 frames. So total in this module we have 7 plus 3, 10 frames altogether. I hope you understand. We are dealing with the 4th module, namely speaking skills. Speaking is very, very important skill, because your personality is assessed by others in the way you speak the language. Second, your ability in expressing yourself is measured by the way you speak the language, that is speaking skill that you exhibit in front of others. So, and it is necessary that as speakers of English as a second language, especially in the context of Kerala, it is necessary that we need to know a wide range of contexts and how to use the language. We have to develop the ability to manage functional exchanges. And I told you about Scott Thornburg. He divides speaking skills in 2 basic functions: transactional function and interpersonal function. And I try to explain to you what is the meaning of transactional function and what is the meaning of interpersonal function. Now we are going to deal with part 1. Take up part 1. Part 1 is divided into 7 different frames. Part 1 is everyday transactions, and part 2 is academic communication, divided into 3 frames. Now we'll do a very small exercise from our day-to-day conversation. Try to find out the response for the question or the statement which I make, or the question which I ask. Try to find out a suitable response. Now I'll also explain to you the situation of the question or situation of the statement I make. The first statement I would like to make is, I understand Aishwarya used to work in Japan. Once again, I understand Aishwarya used to work in Japan. Now Aishwarya is your colleague now, and she has been with you for quite some time in the workplace. But she used to. I understand Aishwarya used to work in Japan. You know that she worked in Japan. So a very suitable response to this statement could be, that's right. It was 5 years ago. See the response. Yeah, that's right. It was 5 years ago. That is how you make the statement and respond to it in an intelligent manner. Second one, very common use, one which is in very common use. When we see a person, we ask you, how are you? It's a very common usage. How are you? And naturally, your response would be, fine, thanks. Or, I am good, thanks. That is the correct response for how are you? Fine, thanks. I am good, thanks. A third one, I usually walk to home after work. After work. Suppose you are staying very near the workplace. It is a good exercise that after work you walk home. That is the statement. I usually walk to home. How could you respond to it? You are also staying, suppose you are also staying very near. You say, I usually walk to home. You say, even I do so. Even I do so. So do I. So do I. Means I am also in the habit of walking to home after work. That would be the correct response to that kind of a statement. I usually walk to home or walk to work. Let us say walk to work. Yeah, I also do the same thing. So do I. That is the best form of responding to it. So do I. The next one is, did you have a good journey? It's a question. Did you have a good journey? And how do you respond to it? Yeah, of course, you had a good journey. And how do you respond to it? Did you have a good journey? Yes, I did. Yes, I did. Did you have a good journey? Yes, I did. Next one is, I don't have any regrets about moving. Now, you had to move to a good, you were compelled to move to a new house because of various reasons. And you find the new home very comfortable and maybe nearer to your workplace. So when you make a statement like that, I don't have any regrets about moving, your sister or your brother, you respond to that statement by saying, I don't have any regrets about moving. Neither do I. Neither do I. Means I also don't have any regrets about moving to the new house. Maybe a different situation. I don't have any regrets about joining the new company. And your colleague tells you, neither do I. Even I am happier here. I am happy here. I am happier here than I was in my previous workplace. So that's how you respond to such a situation. Some more situations I give you. Now, is it a good place to work? Very good place. No, suppose you are in a workplace which is very good. Now, your work-wise, your colleagues-wise, your boss-wise, your salary-wise, you are very happy. So when you listen to a question like this, that is it a good place to work? And your response would be absolutely. Yes, without any doubt, absolutely. Another situation is, are you looking forward to retirement? Now, you have been working so long and you are looking forward for a change, a retired life, a plenty of time to spend with your children, grandchildren perhaps, and you are waiting for the date of your retirement so that you will be able to spend more time with them. So, when somebody makes a question like this, asks a question like this, are you looking forward to retirement? Your response would be, yes, I am. Yes, I am. Now, in the same way, another situation, when did you graduate? When did you graduate? in 2001 or in 2002. It is a year which is when did you graduate? That is the year in which you got your degree. When did you graduate? When did you graduate? In 2010. Another question is, what time do you leave work? What time do you leave work? What would be the response for such a question? What time do you leave work? The response would be at 5 p.m. in the evening, at 4 p.m., at 6 p.m. That is the response, the correct response to such a question asked by someone. All these are different situations when you are compelled to speak the language, and when you speak the language, it should be, according to the context, most suitable response. We need someone who is very reliable. Now, when you are starting a business, to handle the accounts, the finance, you say, we need someone who is very reliable, a trustworthy person. Yeah. I agree. The response would be, I agree, because getting a reliable person to handle finance, which is a very important branch of the establishment, you need to get someone who is reliable. And that's why the response is, I agree. Now, after these few examples from our day-to-day situations, we move on to the next step or the next phase of our session, that is conversational frame 1. Conversational frame 1. Now, I told you there are two parts: everyday transactions divided into 7 frames. Second one is academic communication divided into 3 frames. Now, first we start with conversational frame 1. What is this conversational frame 1? You see, when some people speak to you, when you listen to some people speaking to others, we make a comment usually. Hey, she is very polite in her language. He is very polite. When do we say he or she is polite? How do we understand he or she is polite? It is from the way the person speaks. The way the person speaks. The choice of words and expressions he makes in order to respond to others or in order to ask some questions to others. We need to use a language which is very polished and very, more than being polished, a very polite language, because as I told you in the beginning, using polite language determines your personality. More about using polite language, how important it is to use polite language, to speak politely in our everyday transactions, I'll explain to you in the next session we meet. Till then, keep well. Goodbye.